Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
And welcome to the Tuesday, September 13th Board of Commissioners meeting. We're officially called to order. Today's invocation, Ottawa County seeks to be a welcoming place where you belong, recognizing that we are a county of many different faiths and traditions. Our invocation today is offered by one of those perspectives. I will now introduce today's invocation guest. Bob Hamilton is one of our past county employees, and he was the director of the Office of the Public Defender. Bob is a member of the Baha'i faith and will give today's invocation. Let us welcome Bob.
Thank you, Chairperson Fensky, and thank you all for this opportunity, A, to just come back and see some familiar faces, but B, to do the invocation for the commission. I guess before I do that, I would just like to take a little bit of time to explain the Baha'i faith and what it's all about, because I don't think most people have heard of it. It's relatively new. And I won't take too much of your time here. I'll be very brief. But I've been a Baha'i myself since 2004. I became Baha'i after I went with my wife on Baha'i pilgrimage to Haifa, Israel, where the World Center is, located on the south side of Mount Carmel, overlooking the Mediterranean Ocean. The faith was born in Persia in the 19th century. It was founded by Baha'u'llah, which is the name means glory of God in Arabic. And Baha'u'llah offers a compelling vision of a civilization united in justice, peace, and prosperity for all of us. We consider Baha'u'llah the most recent divine messenger in a series of divine messengers who bring God's message to earth at a various point in time and place in a manner that they can perceive it, recognize, and follow the new teachings of God, but then ever advancing and improving upon those teachings. It's a process called progressive revelation. And progressive revelation is manifested actually in the Bible with the Old Testament, which is very similar to the Jewish Torah, and the New Testament, which is, of course, is based on the teachings of Christ. We follow basically just generally three unities. We believe in one God. All gods come from the same religion. God is eternal. God is limitless, all-knowing, but in his very essence, he's beyond our understanding. We believe in one human family, that God has created us all from the same stock. Each of us are unique, but we differ in our customs, our races, our opinions, our temperaments, but all of us have something to contribute to the ever advancing civilization that God encourages us to pursue. Finally, we believe, as I alluded to a few minutes ago, into one unfolding religion. Religions are not separate. They're more like perhaps chapters of the same book, like the Old Testament and the New Testament. And we believe that Baha'u'llah is the most recent in a string of messengers going back to Krishna, Moses, Christ, Mohammed, Zoroaster, and numerous ones that are unnamed and lost to history. Relevant to these times is we view in the faith our culture as having three protagonists or three heroes: the individual, the community, and the institutions. And we strive to recognize the importance of how these institutions work with each other, rather than having institutions that force rules upon individuals, and individuals who insist on their individuality and their rights We consider that sort of an outdated paradigm in which more profound, spiritually based guidance dictates how the individuals, the communities, and the institutions relate to each other. Prayer is essential to the development of our spirituality. It's like nourishment for our soul and helps us in this world and in the world to become. It is not the act of praying that's beneficial to us, but it is the spirituality and the place from which the prayer is offered that is important to us. And as a bounty to the commissioner, Baha'u'llah writes that a brief prayer that is joyful is preferred to a long prayer which does not induce a spiritual state. It's the spirit of the prayer that is important, not the length of the prayer. We have prayer books that are bounties. They're prayers that were revealed by Baha'u'llah and other members of the faith early on in the faith. And so the one I selected for the invocation today, which I guarantee you has been recited in Baha'i homes around this country a lot in the last several years, is called The Prayer for America. O thou kind Lord, this gathering is turning to thee. These hearts are radiant with thy love. These minds and spirits are exhilarated by the message of thy glad tidings. O God, let this American democracy become glorious in spiritual degrees, even as it has aspired to material degrees. And render this just government victorious. Confirm this revered nation to upraise the standard of the oneness of humanity, to promulgate the most great peace, to become thereby most glorious and praiseworthy among all the nations of the world. O God, this American nation is worthy of thy favors and is deserving of thy mercy. Make it precious and near to thee through thy bounty and bestowal. Abdul Baha. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Ms. Sanchez.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, Mr. Garcia,
Here.
Mr. Baumann,
Here.
Mr. Zylstra,
Here.
Mr. Dannenberg,
Here.
Mr. Meppelink,
Here.
Mr. Terpstra, Mr. Holtvluwer,
Present.
Mr. DeYoung,
Here.
Mr. Kyers,
Here.
Mr. Bergman, Mr. Fenske.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any presentations of petitions or communications from your office?
None from us.
Thank you. Next, we have employee awards, and our sheriff, Steve Kemper, is going to lead us. And under sheriff, Valerie Weiss.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the board. First, I want to start out with some of you are asking me if it was a full moon this weekend. It was a full moon this weekend, and I am glad that it is over with, along with the rest of the team of the sheriff's office. I just wanted to briefly say, as you know, Friday we had a very critical incident in Georgetown, actually two. But that first incident that some of you are aware of, I just need to say thank you to you for your support to the men and women of the Ottawa County Sheriff's Office. because you would be extremely proud, as the undersheriff and I and the rest of the executive team are, of how I would have to estimate 25 to 30 deputies responded to this incident and really took to heart the safety and protection of the citizens in that neighborhood and dealing with the actions that they had to deal with and the incident that they deal with. Just absolutely outstanding. You can be proud of them. I've had citizens reach out to me from Georgetown area, extremely proud of the job that the deputies did there, again, preserving the quality of life and safety and security that they expect. So again, thank you. The reason we're here again is several awards. And I took a count this morning. Since the undersheriff and I took office, we've handed out 68 awards. And this is a proud moment, not only for us, but a proud moment for our agency and the deputies involved. We have 5 deputies to start with this afternoon. And if they could please come up, Deputy Pedroza, Deputy Grice, Deputy Wheaton, Deputy Reich, and Deputy Lacronery. So the first incident involved Deputy Junior Pedroza. And on August 9 of this year at approximately 7:45, a call went out to Central Dispatch for a 4-year-old male that was found in the bottom of a pool, not breathing, in Olive Township. Deputy Pedroza was actually on another call in the area and recognized that he was actually the closest car to the scene and responded immediately to the drowning incident. Deputy Pedroza arrived on scene within approximately 3 minutes. And when he arrived, the victim had already been removed from the pool by the father, but was in the home. Deputy Pedroza checked and recognized that the signs of life were shallow breathing and a very weak pulse, and that the victim here, the 4-year-old, was still suffering some effects of the drowning. Deputy Pedroza immediately took proper medical first aid action with the 4-year-old, which caused the 4-year-old to expel a large amount of water from his lungs and mouth and stomach. Again, these actions, according to the doctors and the medics, obviously prevented any further damage or loss of life to the 4-year-old. And that 4-year-old was again underwater for about 4 to 5 minutes. So again, the actions taken by Deputy Pedroza, the 4-year-old was released from the hospital after a period of time and is expected to make a full recovery. Again, medical staff indicated that if some of these actions were not taken, that we probably would not have had a good outcome. So Deputy Pedroza, congratulations. The second 2 life-saving awards go to Deputy Gracie and Deputy Wheaton, both members of the Road Patrol. And this happened on August 15 of this year. Both deputies were dispatched to what we call a Med 1 Echo, which is a top high-level medical call for a 57-year-old male who was unconscious. While they were en route, they were told that CPR was started. When both of them arrived on scene, they both took over the CPR process. AED was put into place and used. And again, with the continuation of the CPR and the proper medical treatment, their quick and proper response from their training, the patient has since been released, is at home and is recovering extremely well from his cardiac arrest. Again, I think you'll find in all these incidents, I always talk about training. Training pays off and the equipment pays off that's provided to these deputies to provide, again, this service to our citizens of the community. So based on this, again, all these awards are looked at by the awards committee, but I'd like to congratulate both deputies on receiving the life-saving award. The next awards, I'm going to have to read here a little bit for you. This was a traffic crash that occurred on August 17 at about 12:30 in the afternoon. Deputy Shane Reich and Deputy Eric LeConnery were dispatched to an unknown traffic crash at the intersection of 22nd and Jackson in Georgetown Township. The crash involved a Jeep and a semi-tractor pulling two large trailers behind it. Prior to their arrival, the deputies noticed that there was a large amount of black smoke coming from the area where the crash was dispatched. Deputy Reich arrived on scene to observe a Jeep Cherokee with the engine compartment fully involved in flames. The driver, a 22-year-old passenger, had already been removed from the vehicle prior to the crash and to the deputy's arrival. The vehicle was still occupied by 3 subjects. One of the subjects, unfortunately, did not make it and passed away at the scene. The other subjects were all in the vehicle, non-responsive, and they were entrapped within the vehicle. And again, from the damage that was occurred during the collision. During this time, deputies and bystanders were utilizing fire extinguishers to try to hold the flames back from entering the passenger compartment. When Deputy Reich's extinguisher went empty, he was able to get inside the vehicle and to assess the unresponsive passengers. Again, bystanders, the fire department arrived, were able to continue to try to hold the fire back from entering the compartment, passenger compartment. It was later found that the fire was encroaching into the vehicle. So inside, Deputy Reich located a 13-year-old male that was pinned in the front seat, unresponsive with very low breathing, and a 14-year-old female in the rear seat that was deceased, and a 14-year-old female in the rear seat passenger side that was also pinned in the vehicle and unresponsive. Deputy LeCronnery arrived on scene. He's a member of the Georgetown E-Unit. He continued life-saving measures on the passengers while Deputy Reich worked on gaining further entry to the rear of the vehicle to remove the rear seat passenger. Deputy Reich and Deputy LeCronnery were able to bend the rear hatch of the vehicle open, remove items that were all in the trunk area or back portion, and pulled the rear passenger seat out, placing that victim out of the car and a safe distance away. Again, during the entire time of removing the injured people from the vehicle, chemical fire extinguishers were being utilized to keep the flames from encroaching. Both deputies worked to extricate these individuals, and during this time, they dealt with extreme heavy smoke, heat, and dry chemicals from the fire extinguishers during the rescue. And as I mentioned, after the fact, they did determine that the flames had penetrated into the compartment of the vehicle through the front dash area. Also assisting them, and I'll be bringing these gentlemen up shortly, were several workers from a local landscape company that had stopped at the scene, and I'll be recognizing them also in a minute. So both deputies took action that had an outcome from a tragic incident already. And again, with their actions of removing and putting their lives at risk of getting the survivors out of the vehicle, it prevented this tragedy from turning into more of a tragedy. So again, both of the survivors and people that survived the crash are on the mend. And this is actually still an active investigation with the sheriff's office. So again, for both of these deputies taking the brave action that they took with the fire, the chance of the vehicle imploding in fire, again, congratulations, a job very well done. And again, these 2 deputies are receiving our law enforcement award. So again, as I said on the traffic crash, there was a team effort out there where citizens came together, law enforcement came together. And I'd like to ask Jason Gibbons, Stephen Woods, and Tristan Dyke, if you could come forward, gentlemen. These three gentlemen came across the traffic crash just after it occurred. And again, all three of them, without hesitation, stepped into play to help the victims of that traffic crash, help to try to contain the fire. And again, for citizens to come forward and do this is just great to see. And gentlemen, I know that the deputies that were out there, the families that are involved here, say thank you. And again, for what you did. And it's just a small token of our appreciation as your recognition here today and a certificate for you. But again, we can't thank you enough for stepping forward. Again, I'd like to thank these gentlemen. I know their boss is here today. Be proud of them. They did a great job. So again, thank you, gentlemen, for what you did.
Thank you.
But again, I just want to say to the board, thank you.
Thank you, officers and citizens. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have our quarterly GCSI update. Bob DeVries. Hi, Bob.
That's a tough act to follow, guys. Please appreciate the time on the agenda to come and update you on what's going on in Lansing. This will be short because honestly, the legislature hasn't met since I came and talked to you guys last. They're deep in campaign season. They do have 2 session days scheduled for this month yet, one next week and one the week after. But that's it until after Thanksgiving. And they'll have a 3-week, maybe a 4-week lame duck session end of November through most of December. And that'll be it for this legislative cycle. But that's not terrible news for Ottawa County's priorities. A lot of what we wanted to get done is already done. The things that are still out there that we're watching are things that we're hoping don't get done. I mean, primarily the community mental health rewrites that we've long opposed are still out there. They're still in the Senate. They haven't moved, and that's good news. With the end of the year nearing, the likelihood that they can move gets less and less. Still a lot of steps that they have to go through in order to make it to the governor's desk, and they're running out of time to do it. So that's good. But I don't see a ton getting done in general. The elections are raging, as you guys have seen, and they're extremely competitive because this is the first cycle after the new way redistricting is done. Republicans have held a majority in the state Senate since 1983, and then in the House since 2010. And the Democrats have a good shot at taking back both of those chambers. Probably more likely in the Senate than in the House this time around, but it's pretty clear that particularly the decision to overturn the Roe v. Wade decision has fired up Democratic voters in a way that really no other issue has in a while. And whether Republicans are able to fire up their voters equally and match that level of intensity remains to be seen. But 6 months ago, it seemed like this would be a Republican election cycle, not necessarily a wave, but something that would favor Republicans generally. It does not appear to be that anymore. Whether that means it's going to be a very positive cycle for the Democrats still remains to be seen. But in Ottawa County, I think we've discussed this a couple of times, but as the result of this new redistricting, we're going to have a lot of new faces in the legislature from Ottawa County. Representative Meerman and Representative Slaw and Senator Victory are still going to be around. But Nancy DeVore won her primary election out in the Holland area. Greg Van Werkum, who had been representing the Muskegon area, will have a district that comes down into Northwest Ottawa County. And then just for a couple of precincts in very southern Jamestown Township, Rochelle Smith, whose district will be primarily Allegan County, will have just a little bit of Ottawa County as well. And we'll also have one new senator. Like I said, Senator Victory won his primary election and is likely to win his general election. But there is a district that includes Allendale and most of the northeast quadrant of the county, and a lot of kind of northern Kent County. And Representative David LeGrand, a Democrat, is challenging Senator Mark Huizenga for that seat. And it's kind of a toss-up seat, so there'll be a lot of action there. We actually have one more senator coming into Chester Township was included in a district that will run through Montcalm County and Newaygo County and kind of up into some of the mid-Michigan up there. Senator Rick Outman is the likely incumbent to keep that seat. But also dominating the elections this fall are going to be 3 ballot proposals that you're going to hear a lot about. One, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about in the news just recently, is the abortion rights proposal that would add abortion rights as a constitutional right in the Michigan Constitution. That is on the ballot as a constitutional amendment, and it's part of the strategy for the Democrats to turn their voters out. They want to, especially in the wake of the Roe v. Wade decision that overturned Roe v. Wade, to enshrine this in the Michigan Constitution, so that the legislature cannot make abortion illegal in Michigan. That'll be on the ballot, along with something that is being referred to. You'll hear it referred as promote the vote. It's another constitutional amendment that was pushed by Democrat against interest groups to change some voting things. A lot of it enshrines things that are already happening now, but the 2 kind of really bigger changes would be that you can sign up to be a permanent absentee voter. Right now, if I'm going to be out of town or if I want to do an absentee ballot, I have to put in a ballot application every time I want an absentee ballot. This would allow somebody to sign up to get a ballot mailed to them automatically every time. And it would also require 9 days of early voting for each election, which I would imagine would be some sort of expense on the county. And so it's something you guys should be aware of as well. And then the last one is a constitutional amendment as well that would change the way term limits work in Michigan, and also would implement some financial transparency for legislators for the first time. Right now, as you guys probably know, Michigan has pretty restrictive term limits. 6 years in the House, 8 years in the Senate is the maximum anybody can serve. This would change it to 12 years total. So it's actually 2 years less for somebody that would serve the maximum, but it would allow legislators to serve them all in the House or all in the Senate or in any sort of combination in between. This would probably help the House in terms of experience, at least. I mean, nobody can serve in the House more than 6 years right now. A lot of them do their 6 years and they never are able to serve in the legislature again because they don't win a Senate election or they choose not to run for the Senate. And right now the Senate has a lot more kind of institutional experience. And so because many of the members of the Senate have served in the House before. So the proponents would say this is a good thing. It would help balance the scales a little bit. It would also require legislators to fill out personal financial disclosure forms that would be publicly available. So we know kind of what their financial interests are. It's a pretty common thing. I believe 48 other states have done it. Michigan is only one of 2 that doesn't require this. And so that's part of this proposal as well. Would imagine that all 3 of these are going to be all over your TV airwaves and in your mailboxes for the rest of the year as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions. There's not a lot going on in Lansing. The elections are kind of dominating everything at the moment, but let me know if you have any questions.
Mr. Ballin?
Bob, with auto reform,
Yes.
is there anything on the docket right now that you've heard of?
No, in fact, Speaker Wentworth has publicly said that it's off the table for the rest of the year. I know that there is a group that has been pretty aggressive pushing for it. And I think the speaker, rather than make everybody kind of try to stand on their own on the issue, has just said it's on him and he's the speaker until the end of the year. And as long as he's the speaker, there'll be nothing there. And then, whoever is in charge next year can figure out whether something needs to be done about it or not. But he was the one that wrote the law. I mean, he wasn't the speaker yet when that was passed, but he was, in fact, is one of the reasons why he was elevated so highly, is that people thought he did a great job putting that law together. And he says he thinks it's good the way it is. And so I imagine it'll be a bigger issue next year.
Any other questions? Commissioner Zauster?
Yeah, hey Bob, thanks.
Hi.
Just the housing bill package, how's that doing? I heard that there's some good news on that.
I haven't heard anything new. I know it's been stalled in the Senate for,
Yeah, my understanding
in the
is
House, I'm sorry, for quite a
that,
while.
The MEA was not gonna score numbers on that.
Okay, I have not heard that, but I know it remains a priority of many, especially in West Michigan, but it's not something I've been working on personally. I'm not sure.
Any other questions? When will you see you again?
I imagine I'll be here next quarter again, usually once a quarter, Mr. Chairman, but you're always happy to call me or email me if you need anything in between. But thank you once again for your time, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Thanks for your report, Bob.
Thank you.
Next is calendar year 2023 proposed budget summary. Finance Director Karen Karasinski.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. Again, Karen Karasinski, and today we're going to review the proposed 23 budget. There is a much more detailed document in your packet. This is a summary. This presentation is a summary of that document. So to discuss today, I wanted to talk about the steps and the budget calendar, what's been done and what's coming, some of the goals that we set forth when we started the 23 budget process, and then the assumptions that were used to calculate the 23 budget, and then the actual proposed budget for next year. The budget calendar really starts in the spring, in the early spring, March through June. We accumulate requests for operating budgets, capital, and personnel. After we receive those requests and do some estimations for revenues, June, July, and August is a review period. Fiscal Services begins the review, combined with County Administration, and then that kind of culminates with Finance and Administration Committee reviewing it in August. Today is the proposed budget. The document has been on the website and in the clerk's office. The public hearing is advertised in the paper. Later this next week, it would be at the Finance Committee, the formal resolution, and then hopefully for an adoption at the end of September for a 10-1 beginning the new fiscal year. Some of the goals of the 23 proposed budget, we've worked with county offices to import the budget requests. So this really automated and I think made it a lot easier for people to make those entries and provide detail of those requests for review. We fully implemented the Parks Capital Improvement Fund. This is really probably year 2 of that initiative, but all of the Parks capital projects are now in a separate fund, separate from their operations. We continue to increase the capital infrastructure funding. So this fiscal year 23 proposes a $2.4 million contribution from the general fund to the capital improvement fund. That is a $700,000 increase over the current investment. We've reviewed the tax rates and are proposing, I'll cover that in a minute, but we're proposing to leave them the same. And obviously the balanced budget as required by state law is always a main goal. Just an aside, in Fiscal Services every year, we do a budget summary as you have in your packet. We do a formal budget book that is submitted to GFOA for their award. And then at the end of the year, we use the same cover to do our financial statements, kind of connecting the year. This year, we did a photo contest in our department, and Joe Zwicky, who is a budget audit analyst, won the contest. There was a number of pictures submitted, so that's Joe's picture on the front of the book this year. He is an analyst in the health department. So the 23 budget assumptions, they're proposing an 8.5% increase estimated in taxable values. We work closely with equalization in the treasurer's office to estimate those changes in taxable values. State revenue sharing increase of 6%, and then proposing the same 3.9 mil tax levy with a 0.3 mil committed to the retirement funding, as we have for the last few years. January 1, there's a salary and wage cost of living increase of approximately 2% in the budget, along with normal step increases for the employees that have steps on their wage scale. Full year of wage study results has been built into the budget that was implemented in January. And then the fiscal year 22 mid-year cost of living increase is also folded into the 23 proposed budget. Challenges ahead, the capital project funding with the $2.4 million contribution to the capital project fund. This has been something we've been working on, a regular stream of funding for capital projects. As we're seeing those costs rise, we're seeing that we're still continuing to work towards this in future years. Rising inflation and supply chain. So we're watching prices go up of some of the projects or some of the costs that are in the budget. So we're seeing some rise there. And then the MERS investment return is also something we have our eyes on. It's as of June 30th, they posted a loss of 11%. And I think it has come back a little bit, but still something we're focused on and watching, because that will impact future contributions for the retirement plan. The proposed 23 budget continues a long history of Ottawa County levying less than the maximized authorized amount. The proposed budget is based on the 3.9 mils. This is 0.3872 mils less than the maximum authorized. That saves the taxpayers about $6 million a year. The 2021 tax data at the state website shows only 7 other counties that levy less than the authorized amount. So of the 83 counties, there's only 8 counties levying less than their authorized maximum. The Ottawa County operating levy remains the 6th lowest in the state as well. Balanced budget is when revenues plus reserves equal appropriations. So reserves are prior year savings. The general fund proposes a budget with a use of reserves. However, due to department underspending, this funding source is not utilized. It allows us to end the year as we planned, because they budget and then they don't spend, and we don't use this as a revenue source. Special revenue funds are using revenues accumulating from prior years for program funding. And the capital project fund is using reserves. This is the excess general fund balance that the board committed to projects in the spring. Where the money comes from, 87% of all funds come from 3 sources. So intergovernmental revenues, this is federal, state, or local grants, is the largest percentage at 45% of how our budget is funded. Taxes represent 34% of all revenues. And then following up, kind of dropping a little bit, but charges for services is 9% of our funding source. This includes things like court filing fees, real estate transfer tax, recording fees, inmate housing, entrance at the parks, bed rental at the detention center would all fall under charges for services. So how the money is spent, countywide, staffing represents 47% of the dollars spent. Contractual services, the next highest at 22%. For the general fund, this can be things like audit fees, interpreters, and attorney paid fees by the courts and consultants. in other funds like the mental health fund, this is client care contracts, so representing 22% overall countywide. After staffing and contracts, the next largest category is capital at 7% of funding. So when internal payments are removed, the consolidated budget shows the true year-over-year increase or really out the door payments. Much of the $19 million increase from 2022 is to pay current programs and reflects increases due to inflation such as fuel or capital costs, increases in insurance, or maybe increased property taxes collected and passed through the dispatch authority and the road commission. So you'd see increases there in expenditures. Further detail on increases in the fiscal year 23 budget include a number of items. As I've talked about a little bit, wages and benefits include the proposed 2% increase for January, plus a full year of the wage study that was implemented last January, and a full year of the 2% cost of living increase paid last April. It also reflects about 30 positions approved during fiscal year 22 and continuing into fiscal year 23. The fiscal year 23 budget also proposes 15.8 new full-time positions, 6 reclassifications, and 8 new non-benefited positions. The proposed budget includes continuation of the quarterly newsletter and funding to begin working with local units on a countywide land use vision. The budget is the first debt service payment for the Family Justice Center, and there's an increase of $5.6 million in capital funding. Some of the larger capital project funds include building maintenance projects, which is ongoing maintenance at county facilities and office renovations. The crime prevention through environmental design projects are recommendations from the sheriff's office and funded by the insurance authority. Two more case management projects that once implemented will remove our dependency on the legacy AS400 system. Engineering to help scope and prepare a cost estimate for a mental health pod at the jail. An additional cell tower and audio visual improvements in 2 conference rooms in this facility. Parks projects approved by the Parks Commission and funded by the Parks Millage, grants and donations. So with these budget, the next steps after the public hearing today would be next week. A resolution would be presented to the Finance Committee, and then September 27th would be on the board agenda if approved by Finance for a 10-1 start of the year. The budget really represents a countywide effort and would not be possible without the leadership of the Board of Commissioners, administration, and elected officials. A special thanks to the CIP review team, Department of Strategic Impact, and staff in the Fiscal Services Department. Were there any questions?
Questions, gentlemen? Mr. Young?
Karen, thanks for the work, first of all, okay? And I hope there's not a test on this. I got a twofold question. When we talk about January 1 of 2023 and a proposed 2% cost of living adjustment. Is that what other counties are doing also? That's the first part of my question. And the second thing is that how do we justify that when all the news media is proposing that inflation this year is going to be 8 to 9%? How do we justify to everybody a 2%?
So all except for one union so all of the union contracts, there is only one that's up. So it's already been agreed upon for the others. So the one contract that is up for review at 12/31 of this year would be folded in and negotiated. And if there's an adjustment that's required, we would handle it at that time.
But those folks here that aren't in the union, it's just 2%.
We estimated 2%, so this is not, this is a budget, so it's a plan. It's not necessarily, we amend the budget every month at the finance committee meeting, but the current estimate in the budget is 2% for all employees, union and not. And so if something different unfolds throughout the year, that would be, we would have to address the funding at that time.
Any other questions? The one category under revenues, just under 50%, 45, 46%, that money comes from the state through the federal government or directly from the federal government in grants.
So it's called intergovernmental revenue.
Right.
And it's really a combination, but it is grants directly from the federal government passed through the state, directly from the state. Sometimes there are local grants that we also receive, but so it includes things like Medicaid. Medicaid would fall from community mental health, would fall in that category as a large amount of intergovernmental revenue that the county receives. All of the federal grants in our single audit. It was fiscal year 21. I think there was $21 million of federal money that the county received. So that would fall within that category.
So if one chose not to receive that money, what would that look like for the county?
Well, it's our largest revenue category. It would depend on the program, what we would not be able to provide or how that would be impacted. But it would have significant impacts on the program that it funds.
Okay. Thank you, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
Nice report. Next, before we go into public comments, I have my board chair comments for today. Show your support for agriculture at Farms Are the Tapas, where guests can enjoy fresh tapas created and locally sourced ingredients by area chefs and bid on a variety of silent auction items. This event will be held at the Red Shed in Hudsonville, supported by Commissioner DeYoung, in Hudsonville on September the 29th from 6 to 8 p.m. This is our major fundraiser to support our county agricultural preservation program. Please join us and show your support for our local farming community. Next, on the county's website, there's an opportunity to become an election worker at the voting polls. If you are interested in becoming an election worker and want to learn more about expectations and qualifications, please visit the county's website for more details. And then finally, save the date for the observatory dedication and grand opening at Hemlock Crossing County Park on Saturday, October the 8th from 6 to 9 p.m. This public observatory has a 15-foot pro dome with a 16-inch Schmidt Cassegrain telescope. The telescope will be wireless connected to the Nature Education Center to project live images of the night sky. Next is our first opportunity for public comment. Madam Clerk.
Yes, Catherine Nash from Spring Lake Township.
Welcome, Catherine.
Hello. As we go into fall and head toward the season of elections, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of you for your service and the things that you have done over the years. Many of you have been here. I don't think people understand the scope and the magnitude of your job. With the 83 counties we have in Michigan, Ottawa County is oftentimes in many publications at the top of the list of a lot of reasons why people want to live in a county. We kind of jockey with Livingston County from time to time, but Ottawa County is always up there. You folks do a wonderful job with finances, with policy and planning and looking at our county parks. They're above reproach. They're wonderful. We have so much to offer. And our infrastructure, as a wise elected official said to me, nobody really is concerned with what's underground until the sewer backs up in your basement. Also Health and Human Services, as a retired health educator, I always appreciated the health department with guidance for materials to keep my students safe and keep them well educated. Also the human resources. So thank you very much for all the wonderful things that you have done over the years.
Thank you.
That is all that pre-registered.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into approval of our agenda. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Holtvluwer,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberg,
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Meppelink,
Yes.
Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
Mr. Fenske,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. Under actions and reports, consent resolutions, Commissioner Dannenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to approve consent resolutions 1 through 5.
Support. Any discussion? Seeing none, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Dannenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Meppelink,
Yes.
Mr. Holtvluwer,
Yes.
Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Fenske,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. Public hearing, Commissioner Meppelink.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing to receive comments on the fiscal year 2023 Ottawa County budget.
There's a motion and a support. You call the roll, please.
Mr. Dannenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
Mr. Meppelink,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Holtvluwer,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Fenske,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. At this time, we're open for comments, opinions, questions about the 2023 county budget. Anyone online? No? Okay,
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion then to close the public hearing for the fiscal year 2023 Ottawa County budget.
Second.
any further discussion? You call the roll, please.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Holtvluwer,
Yes.
Mr. Meppelink,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman, or Dannenberg, sorry,
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
Mr. Fenske,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. From Planning and Policy, Commissioner DeYoung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the retirement policy, second reading, I move to approve the revised retirement policy for review and comment.
Gentlemen, any questions, discussion? Seeing none, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Holtvluwer,
Yes.
Mr. Baumann,
Yes.
Mr. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Meppelink,
Yes.
Mr. Fenske,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. Appointments, none. Discussion items, none. Report from the county administrator, Mr. Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You can see that construction is progressing on the Family Justice Center. The basement walls will be poured today, and the upper level concrete will be poured in a couple weeks. We expect the steel work to begin on October 1st, so the construction crane for that should be delivered next week. And they'll also begin work on the water main and stormwater. Still waiting for a permit from Eagle on the sanitary sewer. And they're also looking to do some of the base grading for the main parking lots because they want to get at least a base coat of asphalt in before winter hits. Again, I may have mentioned, we did finish the remodeling of the administrative side of CMH offices. Just some punch list items. We're waiting on some back ordered flooring for the break room, as well as some cabinets in that area as well. We did replace the carpet on the 3rd floor of the Grand Haven Courthouse. We're having a heck of a time, speaking of the Grand Haven Courthouse. We're trying to replace the boiler stack, and some of the materials for the stack that came in were damaged. We got a new shipment of stack piping, only discovered that it was damaged as well. So we're struggling to get this taken care of, but we're obviously not going to install damaged materials. We are finalizing the design and equipment that will be put in. We're redesigning all of our courthouse security stations. And so that they'll be very similar, if not almost identical for each of the courthouses, but they'll have all of the same equipment and layout. And so Progressive AE is working on the construction plans for that, so we can put that out for bids. And work still continues on B building to reclad that. I believe we're looking at December for that to be taken care of. And then we're getting final pricing in, estimated pricing in to remodel the public health clinic there on James Street for the first time in 45 years. I think it's been as well. We are getting, we've conducted additional interviews for the deputy county administrator position. And I think we've had some good candidates, and I think we're getting really close to finalizing that process. And when that is finalized, I'll let you all know, but feeling a little better based on the last round of interviews than maybe at the beginning of the process. So that's coming along. Still continuing my process to meet with the local units. So in the last couple of weeks, I've met with the city of Ferrysburg and the city of Grand Haven. And then we had a ARPA task force meeting last week. So we are accepting applications for the various buckets or categories of spending at the end of this month. And then those will be submitted to the task force, I think in mid-October. We'll probably have 2 task force meetings in October to review those projects. And so that the task force can then submit recommendations to the finance committee at the November finance committee. And then the finance committee would then make a recommendation to the board of commissioners we're probably aiming for that last week of the last board meeting in November. So that process is coming around. And I think that's what I got for you.
The internal county bucket, that is due also on the
September 30th. And so so thanks for bringing that up. So that will not go through the task force itself. So anything on the internal county will go directly to the finance committee and then to the board. But yeah, those applications are due as well on the 30th.
Thank you. Any questions for John?
Just a
Commissioner
quick
Zylstra?
question, John, about the first board meeting in November. Is there any thought to switching that to a Thursday because it falls on election day?
It'd be up to the chair and the board if you want to do that or not.
I'm not inclined to change it. It's usually a light meeting the first of the month, and I don't see changing it for the voting day as necessary to me personally, but gentlemen, your thoughts on that?
I got absentee ballot, I vote weeks before.
Some of us do have elections on that day, but well, one of us does. So.
Trump sent me 100 of them, so I can put them all in.
Okay.
I have a quick question. John, what happens to the ARPA dollars that we don't use? Because I imagine that there's a timeline by when we have to use those dollars. Do they get returned, or do they just go into the general fund?
Well, ARPA funds, if they're ARPA funds, have to be committed by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. We've been using our ARPA funds really for to reimburse us for lost revenue.
Mhm.
So, and once we do that, so as an example, and I know I have this amount wrong, but I believe it was in March, we may have spent 11 or $14 million of our ARPA funds for public safety payroll. And then we're basically taking the general fund money that we would have spent on that and setting that aside and committing it for our projects, our bucket projects. So that's really now considered county money. So we don't have a deadline in which to spend that.
Okay, and I guess I asked because, I think at our last board meeting, we had 3 proposals that we approved, and I know that there was 1 vote that was not in favor of it. So I just wondered, with a new board that's coming on board in January, if those dollars will stay here in Ottawa County, then.
Yeah, I mean, to the extent that we've spent that ARPA money on reimbursing us for lost
Right.
revenue, then that's county money that the Board of Commissioners can determine how to spend that.
So let's say that all of the ARPA projects come in and let's say that 50% of them are declined or not approved and so forth. Does that mean that we continue to take new proposals until we do? use
Yeah,
those
this,
dollars?
so the dates I gave you here, the October, September 30th, that's really round 1 of funding. We're not anticipating nor recommending really spending all 57 million because one of the buckets, broadband, is we're not ready yet. And that's really a county-led initiative. We're not ready yet to say this is how much money we need for broadband. So, so there, even after this first round goes through by November, there will be, I'll just say additional ARPA money. I know we're money left over for subsequent rounds.
Okay.
Any further questions? General information, comments, meetings attended?
Yeah, we have a MAC conference coming up on Saturday, so starts on Sunday, so most of us will be going in there on Saturday afternoon. So look forward to see you guys there. We should have some good work sessions and should be a good time. It's important here on. We also, the Bass recreational area has sent out a really good questionnaire, what people in the area want to see that place do. I mean, it's really developing. It's getting to be a strong recreational base place. It has mountain biking, it has hunting, open hunting, it has boating, it has ice fishing. So we put it on the website, correct, John? For the county website at Bass Recreation. I think Shannon did that. Yeah, yes.
If she hasn't already, we can do that.
Yeah, so if you get a chance, look it over. Any input you can have there would be greatly appreciated. So thank you.
This is our second opportunity for public comment.
We do have 1 person online. Oh, they removed their hand. Never mind.
We're good?
Yep.
Okay. There's no other business. Stand adjourned.